Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and what do you know, we got a cool down week. Shame very little of it's good, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn.
I don't remember.
Why did I get the feeling that this week was gonna wind up more eventful than it is? Granted, there's some post-Grammys aftermath, and with Universal escalating its Cold War with TikTok by yanking its catalog off the platform and delaying major album release dates to protect their promotional bottom line, there was gonna be a slowdown, and frankly, I'm not sure who caves in first in this scenario. But in the meantime, let me put it like this. I prefer some brand of normalcy compared to what's likely coming in a week or two. If you're familiar with the, blitzkrieg is the appropriate word here. For what music critics are already facing, you already know. Shame this week in the meantime wasn't any good, but we'll get to that. But again, before then, let's get to our top 10, where, as I predicted, Lovin' On Me by Jack Harlow is back again at number 1. Again, it's not surprising. Streaming might have taken a slight dip, but his radio margin is so strong that it barely matters. Again, shame the song's not good. And to be honest, I don't think Lose Control by Teddy Swims is set to topple him soon from number 2. The streaming's only decent, but the radio margin is so wide, I don't see him making a serious play, at least not yet. What might have a better shot, and man, I'm not happy about it, is Beautiful Things by Benson Boone up to number 3. The radio has been very slow to get on board, which is what happens when you don't have big name recognition and your song sounds like shit, but he took the top spot on streaming, and good lord, can we not have a repeat of Lucas Graham nearly getting to the top in 2024? I feel like that might be a bad omen. But it got over Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift at number 4, which had an okay week on streaming, but is absolutely on its way out on the radio. It's getting dumped there. That's not quite the case for Snooze by SZA at number 5. Thank the Grammys for a bump, especially on streaming, which vaulted it back up this high, and right over I Remember Everything by Zach Bryan and Casey Musgraves at number 6, where the streaming is still rock solid, but the radio has just never given it a proper chance. Glaring at you right now, Music Row. You could have gotten on this months ago. It did hold over Greedy by Tate McRae down at number 7. Okay streaming week balanced out on the rotation out on radio. Then the second rebound to the top 10, thanks to the Grammys and a streaming boost, Fast Car by Luke Combs at number 8. Not the only time this song will come up, we'll get to it. And that jumped over Agora Hills by Doja Cat at number 9, which actually had a really good week on the radio, but just cannot get streaming going at all. And that's in contrast to yet another Grammy bump for Flowers by Miley Cyrus, putting it back at number 10 because we just can't get rid of it, and I'm long sick of it. That takes us neatly to our losers and dropouts, which in the latter category, not really anything worth mentioning, which is more of a barb than I think needs saying, but enough of me being cute. It flows naturally into the losses, and the big story here being Hiss by Megan Thee Stallion falling back out of the top 10 to 13. And again, this isn't a surprise, I called this. It's a great song, don't get me wrong, but it's a diss track, it's got no hook. I'm frankly shocked that it's stuck around this high, compared to its competition, which, let's just say, didn't stay on the Hot 100 at all. But also on the topic of debuts losing, we had Spin You Around 124 by Morgan Wallen fall back to 51, and Think You the Shit Fart by Ice Spice at 52. And the categories of continued losers, we still got 21 Savage with All of Me at 88, NHIE with Doja Cat at 89, and Should Have Worn a Bonnet with Brent Faiyaz at 90. There are a couple other continued losses here. Igual Que Un Angel by Caliucci and Pesa Pluma at 53, and FTCU by Nicki Minaj at 54. But finally, Monaco by Bad Bunny at 77, which is probably going to make the year-end list, but it seems like it's just done way less than one might have expected, at least stateside. Now this takes us naturally to returns and gains, where in the former group, we can move past Where It Ends by Bailey Zimmerman climb back to 100, and Sensational by Chris Brown, DeVito, and Lil J at 94. The real story is the big return of Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. Yeah, you can thank the Grammys for this, but in all due seriousness, to ride out some truly excellent sales, I'm happy the original is getting another chance to shine at 42, even if it's just for a week. That's a great thing, it's a classic song. But we did have a lot of gains, and while I've already mentioned a couple thanks to the Grammys, there was a bunch more. What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish at 20, Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo at 29, On My Mama by Victoria Monet at 33, and I guess I should put the two Travis Scott gains in here, with Theme with Playboi Carti at 69, and My Eyes at 85. Outside of those, kind of a weird list. The Painter by Cody Johnson's doing well at 30. X's by Tate McRae's getting the radio push at 34. Standing Next to You by Jungkook is sticking around at 81. And then we got the two pickups off last week debuts that did kind of surprise me. The first is One Call by Rich Amiri at 64. Apparently streaming's really picking up. Then there's Praise Ya in the Moonlight by YG Marley at 60. Look, I know it's a worldwide hit. I should not be surprised, but the streaming is there for this too. On name recognition and pedigree alone, I can imagine it making a run. Would not surprise me. Really wish I liked it more. But from there, we got a pretty reasonable list of new arrivals. Might actually help keep this episode a bit shorter. So let's start off with number 98, Scared to Start by Michael Marcagi.
Are you scared to start?
You know, when it comes to relatively unknown singer-songwriters that chart from out of nowhere with a boost from TikTok, it's interesting when you start digging a little bit. So enter Michael Marcagi, who is signed to Warner, and as of recording, one EP with 5 songs, 9 million monthly listeners on Spotify. That tells me someone went big time viral or got playlisted. And it's not hard to see why. Marcagi's clearly chasing Noah Kahan with his vocal tone, the softer guitars balanced against the pianos, no tangible groove to speak of, and a choral sing-along hook that with all the reverb drenching this mix sounds like something that would have dropped in the early 2010s and would have been promptly forgotten. If I would have put a timeline on it, I'd say late 2013, early 2014. I guess if there's something to recommend, it's the challenge inherent in the hook. Are you scared to give this heartbroken girl a proper chance given the ups and downs likely ahead? But the larger issue is that the song just cannot build any momentum, make that actual adventure on the horizon come to the forefront. So the song becomes pretty much a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's scared to start. Look, I probably have more time for this sound than I probably should at this point, and this guy does not annoy me as much as Noah Kahan can, but it's not that interesting or special. Let's move on. Number 87, A Cold Sunday by Lil Yachty.
I fought demons after fame. I spent millions on terrain. I treat my bitches like Diana. Pretty princess, hold a phantom. 2003 Dolce & Gabbana. Jeans make her ass look fatter.
Maybe it's expecting too much for Lil Yachty to continuing going into that psychedelic prog rock scene. I saw him live last year at a music festival. His bangers got a way better reception from the crowds than any of the more interesting experimentation, which had to be depressing as hell for him, and it's probably why an extended verse that he dropped on TikTok was built more for chart crossover. But you know, to his credit, this actually does feel like a middle ground, with an old 60s R&B sample flip for some more textured and lo-fi percussion. It's a much more relaxed instrumental, and I actually really like it. Shame that it's Lil Yachty on top of it. I've never thought his flow was all that good. He really struggles to get in the pocket well here, and the content's a bunch of girl troubles and brand name porn. What feels most consistent is the assertion that Lil Yachty is grown up and he wants respect more than anything. And you know what, sure, this sort of mature backdrop, it is a way to get it from a lot of rap fans, but all we got here was a verse that feels like a throwaway on a song that's not even 2 minutes long. It's certainly listenable on production alone. I just wish there was more to it. Number 68, Get In With Me by Bossman Dlow.
Pay a shoe, $12.50. You wanna boss up your life? All you gotta do is get in with me. I don't even pay to get in the club. They know I'm a walking tick.
This is another case of a relatively obscure rapper getting a massive viral boost off of one song, but at least for Bossman Dlow, there's a little bit more to discuss. He's a Florida rapper. He put out 2 albums last year that got him signed to Alamo, and this is a short single that's not tied to either album. And I mean, with that bass clipping around the mix, around the cheap trap percussion, the hazy synth and piano, and Bossman Dlow having some tangible swagger, I do get why some folks will get on board, especially for a live show. But as a rapper, I'm not really impressed. His flow is barely on beat, the flexing is bog standard, and midway through the one verse, he defaults to an even more basic flow that makes the entire 2-minute track feel basically unfinished. At least with Lil Yachty, I liked more of the sample and production. This did not get there for me. Not a fan. Number 62, Turn the Lights Back On by Billy Joel.
As we're laying in the darkness, did I wait too long to turn the lights back on?
I don't know what the general popular consensus is around Billy Joel anymore. He's got more than enough hits, and as a legacy act, he's got staying power with Middle America. I guess I shouldn't be that surprised that his first solo single since 1993 would chart decently well. And given that I don't think I've ever spoken publicly on my thoughts, I think his piano rock has its wild and weird ups and downs, but he's got a healthy stack of classics, and his gift for melody has kept more than a few songs in my regular rotation. That being said, I had heard the comeback single was pretty rough, so I was not looking forward to this, and yeah, honestly, I'm kind of mixed as a whole, mostly because the subtext of being a letter to old fans to reopen up his career, it did some heavy lifting emotionally, at least for me. He's good at structuring a melodic hook too, and the sentiment feels decently realized. But dig even a little bit deeper, and I can recognize just how much of this is pulling on my nostalgia to cover up some major issues in execution. Specifically the vocal mix, which feels weirdly flat as he starts belting, with the sort of touch-ups to sound more grand in the mix as the strings and drums come in, but they also feel hemmed in and underpowered, and it feels a little bit too tasteful. Reminds me a lot of Broadway cast album mixes where the budget restrictions are a lot more obvious than they should be, but this is Billy Joel. That should not be a factor with your big comeback. I'll be honest, I was very negative on this song the first couple times I heard it. Very, what is this schlock? You're better than this, Billy Joel. And I mean, I still don't think it's particularly good, but it's not that bad. I guess if you're gonna wait so long to turn those lights back on, the song should be worth it. All I'm saying. And finally, number 38, Bandit by Don Toliver.
Like it's Marilyn Manson. Got the cash advancing. Get the Sprite and enhance it. Pull the walk out the pantry.
Okay, so this week's been thoroughly mediocre. I guess I'm praying that Don Toliver, of all people, might be able to save it with a lead-off single for his next album, and it's reportedly a sequel to his 2021 project. So it's just our luck that I don't think this is good at all. That painfully canned melody where any individual instrument feels crushed into mush. It's probably a guitar, given that the song is sampling and then chipmunking Tame Impala around the cheap trap percussion. This mix that's wildly overcompressed and has some truly gruesome vocal mixing as Don Toliver squawks and raps over a mix that does nothing to amplify his melodic strengths as a singer, and he sounds awful on that outro. And he's trying to sell intensity. He's trying to play up the Travis Scott-esque debauchery, which has to be the only reason he referenced Marilyn Manson on his hook, alongside the women who take perks like Plan B, yikes. But the production just gives him no explosive power outside of him yelling, "Bust it!" So the entire track feels painfully flat. And look, I get why Don Toliver might have made this. I'm sure it's going to work at a festival, but it's not at all what I want to hear from him. I cannot recommend this at all. And yeah, this week was not good. Bandit by Don Toliver is getting the worst easily, but the best... You know what? I think it's kind of a toss-up between Lil Yachty and Billy Joel, but I think Billy Joel might have the slightest edge, if only on song construction and decent enough lyrics and songwriting. It's a lot more narrow than many would admit or expect. But hey, it's probably going to get much, much worse next week. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.